So, due to a play that I was in, I've been doing this book. It's like supposed to be like a 52-week course or 32 weeks or something. But I was in a play, and so I haven't touched this book in about a month and a half. And I just find it easier to learn what I'm teaching. Just something I do with my job, and so I thought, why not just go ahead and record this? The book is Reading the Marseille Tarot by J.M.David. I've just found that by learning the history and by learning the Marseille, it just helps with every other card out there, because the Marseille is really, you have to do a lot of intuitive reading, and I can learn keywords. You know, that's not a problem. I know all the keywords and all that stuff like that. So I'm using this to get a bit of a deeper meaning. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm just starting from where I stopped last time. And what I was just reading here that I thought was interesting, it says, and let me get here in case anybody does pop up again in the chat. Let me pull that up. And there we go. Now if somebody does pop in, I can see it. Thank you, Facebook, for all these offers and all this crap. Okay, so the Empress. Also note that we now call this card the Empress. Neither the carry sheet, and the carry sheet is, if I remember correctly, it was sheets of paper that were found within a book binding that had the woodblock impressions of a deck of tarot cards. Not all of them, but it had several of them. And it's like the oldest known copy of the tarot. So what it's saying, though, is that the Empress and the Vaville cards bears no title. And though the latter by crown is clearly Empress, there is no reason to assume the figure was originally intended as Empress. In fact, both in the Visconti Sforza and the carry sheet, she seems to depict a local Milanese duchess. And here again, the shield and its emblem, as well as the depicted crown, bears this out, the single eagle. So this is a carry sheet, and the carry sheet's got that single eagle on there, as does the Vaville. And based on this, there's a whole section in here that covers crowns, and says, so somebody in the 15th century would know exactly what that crown means. Who is that? Okay. So, yeah, somebody in the 15th century would definitely know, because it's a matter of life and death back then. So here again, the shield and the emblem. So we have weaved back and forth across the cards and details, yet the 3 points or bird wing below the upturned umbrella shape. Okay, so I just thought that was interesting, and I need to actually highlight that. What did I bring my highlighter over here also? Let me grab my highlight. There it is. Yeah, because that is interesting. That originally was more likely a Milanese marquise. Okay. So, and I have notes. I have so many tabs in here, but let me type not not but Duchess. Okay. That is just an interesting enough fact that I want to keep that in mind. Just for historical reasons. Hysterical reasons. Okay, so... and yeah, the book is really good about showing connections and things like that. And I'm looking for the stuff that I actually highlighted. So now here's where we go into the courts and reading the tarot. So by this point it had me go through a bunch of different exercises, pairing cards, pips and their sequences, and reviewing. It was really interesting. So here is something, and if nobody's here, but this is pretty fascinating. But the Page of Wands flows into the Magician, which flows into the Page of Swords. So, if I can find them real quick, there's the Magician. Here's the Page of Swords. And the Page of Wands. So this was something that I just kind of accidentally discovered and nobody had ever pointed out, because who looks at the original Noble deck, right? Unless you're an absolute geek like I am. But looking at this original Noble, it's like, this is no accident. Wow, how'd these cards get all mixed up? Normally I don't read on this particular deck. I don't do reversals. But this is really worthwhile looking at. And something that I always want to keep in mind. Page of Wands. Yes, okay, so. Now, check this out. So here we have the Page of Wands. Now, it can't be an accident, first off, that the Page of Wands and the Magician look like brothers. I mean, literally. Look at that. And then, look at the flow. I mean, that flow right there is too perfect. Right? I mean, that just looks like it flows right down. So these guys look like they're brothers. They're dressed pretty closely together. Their arms here are exactly the same and identical. And so, how can that be a coincidence? Especially when you look at the Page of Wands, who's looking straight at the Magician. This is like a perfect flow here. I mean, literally. So, things like this, I always wonder how it can be a coincidence. And I had noticed that before, and I just want to keep myself refreshed on that, because I think that's really an interesting point. And I had actually forgotten about that. So, okay, so valets, another thing. Valets are not servants. Pages and valets can be seen as apprentice. We tend to think of valets. Wow, I'm glad I am going back through this because I forget about this stuff. We tend to think of valets as servants. Yet a better term would probably be a personal assistant, with much of the actual work carried out by the servants that do not even form a part of the court cards. So if you think back to the Middle Ages, a page or a valet, nobles would have their sons go to a court to be raised in the court. And they would be pages, they would be valets, they would actually be of royal blood. So when you think of a page and you think of a valet, it's not a servant. This is somebody of noble blood that we're actually dealing with. Cavalier, 1659, a knight or a gentleman serving on horseback, a man of arms, from Latin, Calabreus, meaning horseman. See other page for more. So, you know, we need to remember also, you know, or what I choose to remember is that the culture that these cards were made in at the time, the historical culture, they put a different value, a different meaning to these cards. So it's talking about, you know, yet the cavalier has not quite the same singular connotation as a knight. So in the Marseille, it's a cavalier. The former is perhaps better rendered as horse rider. As horse rider, he may be a knight, or instead simply that, a rider. And for this latter, irrespective of gender. The use of a horse suggests that either distance needs to be covered, or alternatively that a processional show is implied. Still, some wealth and independent means is implied. So, yeah, I mean, I've always assumed that, especially since they're richly dressed, that the knight was probably of means, whether it's royalty or whatever. Each profession has its own crowned figure as recognized by his peer. What this, even if the king for a day, but as a kind of figure, okay. And again, this book is really good. As it actually goes through, it shows you the different types of crowns that would be on the cards: England, Belgium, Holland, and whether they were from prince, a duke, marquis, viscount, things like that. All this are the important symbols of what you see within the crowns and how they are represented. So the more you know about the symbols of a card, it doesn't matter whether it's Rider Waite or it's Smith or it's Marseille or any deck, you know, understanding what the representations are, you know, seeing the different symbols will just add one more layer to a meaning, which is why I really am glad I started this book. Let's see. Suits, swords, the judicial, political spectrum, deniers, the financial and artisanal professions, cups, the educational and religious, and batons, the peasant and the menial labor. Let me see something here. Okay. Excuse me 1 second. Then I'm going to cover that again. Again, just so I can remember. Okay. So, a lot of us already know this, but within the suits, again, swords, the judicial political spectrum, deniers, the financial and artisanal professions, cups, educational and religious, and batons, the peasant and menial laborers. And I covered that before, but I really like looking at the cards in that spectrum. Yes, the cards can be also the elements, you know, the elements and all that other wonderful stuff. But it just seems to me that originally, since there would not have been the magical connotations, if you're looking at these cards, the batons, it absolutely makes sense that it would be the peasant or the menial laborers. Makes absolute sense if I'm in the 15th century and I'm looking at this card and I see cups, that it would be the spiritual or the religious sphere. And so, again, I've kind of adopted that regardless of what decks I'm looking at. And I still use the elements just because it gives me that connection, or as Waite would say, the correspondence. But again, thinking of the swords, judicial and political, which would be the kings and his court. Money, the financial, and artisanal, that just makes sense. So, yep, I just want to keep that in mind. Valet-like. So, I got another note in here. One of the things that really is kind of cool and that I remember, that I keep in mind now, is that with the valets, is that they're apprentices. They are at the learning stage. So I like that idea of an apprentice, because a valet was just that. It was an apprentice knight. You know, the pages are an apprentice knight. So when I see a page, it is somebody who is an apprentice, somebody who's in that learning mode. But I like that. I keep that word apprentice in my head now when I'm looking at the valet. I mean, yeah, the valet or the page. Let's see, what else did I get here? Arm and hand movement. Let's return to the cards for another observation, this time disregarding all but the position of both the arms of each card and the implements being held. I have a note here outlining an entire paragraph. Let me see here. So, also, let us imagine that each successive card within a suit is the same person. Oh, yeah. Imagine that each successive card within the suit is the same person who has simply been captured by successive photographic image. In imagination, let us move the figure's arms and implement in order for the valets to become the cavaliers, and from thence to the queens, and henceforth the kings. Now reverse the order from king to valet and alter the order from cavalier to king to valet to queen, and other permutations. For the purpose of this exercise, the location, posture, and other important details of each figure are not considered. Only the motion of the hands and the arms and the implements held or aloft. This exercise, though focusing solely on the arms, can be applied to any sequential card. We had in Chapter 2 the active inclusion of multiple cards as scenes. Here instead, the imagination is called upon to transform one card image into another. So, yeah, I remember that. So, I'm just going to see which one I pull up all four of first. Because what it is asking is to take your imagination and grow this card from the page to the king. Again, giving it depth, giving it more life, giving it, moving from one point to another in time as if photographs. Okay, there's 4 batons. So, and he's saying just do it with the hand movements and imagination. So, doing it just with hand movements and the imagination. Here we have the valet. And then imagining the motions it would take for his hand to take the wand and actually bring it upright. So he would literally be shifting in his seat, shifting around, and I can imagine him growing. Again, this is just different stages in one person's life. And doing the exercise, imagining that he's taking that, he's now shifting and lifting it up. And then taking it into the next hand and just imagining the hands is what they're saying. It's like, just imagine what movements it would take for the hands as this person gets older. And now it is shifted into the right hand. Okay, so, yeah, because he's got it in the left hand here. So he's holding it in the top, so just imagining that left hand and then shifting to the right. And then finally, at the oldest point, the hand going up and just holding the baton. Okay, with the whole point being that we're now seeing the progression of the young page, the valet, as he's grown into manhood. Yeah, and I'm lucky in the sense that, you know, I am an artist, a writer, a singer, musician. And I've got a very vivid imagination, and so when I look at cards, they tell stories anyway. And I can see a growth here as this person gets older. And prior, I had done that with this book. I'd done each of the different suits and just meditated on it. See. Okay. Then, yeah, hand positions. Let's see here. Then I move on and I go to the Emperor. Okay. And I'm just looking for the stuff I've highlighted. But he does go into like the profiles. You know, and it's really cool actually, because this book, again, learning with the Marseille, but you carry it over to whatever deck. And he's just showing the different profiles of all the different people and how important it is to look and see where they're looking. And he's comparing the different emperors. Let's see, what else have I got here? Okay, so the Pope. Pope appears to be standing. Yep. I know that in the cards we see now he's sitting there and he's got the dudes underneath him there with really funky hands with only 4 fingers. De Pope. Appears to be seen. It's often been claimed that the Pope is sitting. This is not, however, evident at all from any of these images. Rather, he appears to be standing on or within a raised platform or podium. So, yeah, I mean, all these old ones, it does appear like he's standing. And the backs of the chairs that we end up seeing are really the columns that are behind him. but as it evolved, it turned into the backs of chairs. Pope advice. Okay. Who is the Pope as a person? The Pope is also the giver of advice. I have highlighted here. Gives counseling. Let's see. Guidance that may nonetheless have various other consequences, such as abstaining from certain foods or activity, or alternatively participating in various activities and consuming certain foods. Just the Pope, talking about the aspects, the Pope controls pretty much everything of your life anyway, right? Not that he says that here, but, well, religious obedience is the general submission. Yeah, so, okay. The Pope. Papal representation is God. Boy, I got a lot of writing here. It may be worth considering the social dimensions of the Christian context here, and perhaps specifically given the card representation, the three aspects. So, what do I have written here? LFO. 3 leaves. Ace, 3 leaves for LFO. What do I... Oh, love, obedience, freedom. Okay. I should notate that. And then see if I can remember what I was talking about here. Love. And freedom. Let's see. It may again be worth considering the social dimension of the Christian context here, and perhaps specifically given the card representation, 3 aspects. There is first the statement from Matthew, quoted on the first page, about the divine presence when 2 or 3 meet in his name. Then there is the way to the Father, and that is by way of the Son. John 14:16, well illustrated in the image below. Okay. And finally, the call of the 2 greatest commandments: to love on one hand God with all one's heart, soul, and mind, and on the other hand one's neighbor. These would, I would suggest, not only be important aspects of living impulses of any sermons ideally delivered in the name of Christianity, but also each illustrated an economy of representation in the card at hand, and particularly well in the Noble. So freedom. If we can argue that the Pope blesses and points to that which is beyond the veil appearance, it raises to our own understanding by way of faith and achieves one. Religion will set you free, a statement at odds and quite contrary to the opposite claims resounding not only from the voice of Marx, but also from much of our daily experience via the eyes and ears of television. At this stage, the concept of love, obedience, and freedom all seem to intertwine in apparent paradox, a paradox that may perhaps be examined and unveiled by contrast. So that's right. So this is a it was an exercise. Okay, I was trying to remember why I had all this here, but at this stage the concept, okay. So let us here place side by side the Pope and the Devil cards, and allow the concepts of love, of freedom, and of obedience to play themselves out in each of these cards, each taking on different tones and shades as the image either exemplifies and is in turn exemplified by each of these concepts, or instead is seen to subvert, rigidify, or codify these. Suits of cups, swords, and coins. Taking the 10 pip cards from the suit of cups and looking specifically at the aberisks. Okay, so just to give you an understanding, give myself an understanding. The 10 of Pips from the Suit of Cups. Hey, there's 9. It's pretty close. But with the Marseille, just to throw this in, you know, what he's doing here when he's talking about the pips is how to read pips even though there's no pictures on it. And so this book goes through that and how to actually use the visual clues that are in the Marseille the same way you would even if you were looking at a picture of the Rider-Waite. You know, you can come up with your own mental images of what these cards mean. So, 10 of Cups, what is he saying here? So taking the 10 pip cards from the Suit of Cups. Oh, well, taking them all. Okay, so taking the 10 pip cards from the Suit of Cups and looking specifically at the Abesques. You know what? I read a lot, but don't talk a lot. And so sometimes there's words that I am absolutely sure I'm pronouncing wrong. Now that I'm finally saying it out for the first time. Okay. So, and looking specifically at the arabesques. Arabesque. The floral arrangements. Similarly, reflect on what is taking place with love, freedom, and obedience. Harkening back over some of the concepts we looked at over the past few weeks, let us also take the pips from the Suit of Coins and Swords. With the arabesques on the on the Suit of Coins, how is loyalty playing out? And finally, with overall design of the pips from Swords, Suits, how is tolerance affected and reflected in each card? Although the above is but 2 short paragraphs, I would suggest taking time to carefully look and reflect and note. So, as it went on, so I went through all the cards, and I mean, using my impressions of what I see. You know, the 2, sprouting love. 3, separating into 2. 4, reaching for the sun. 5, a standoff. 6, division. 7, sprouting, giving. 8, a map. 9, perfect order. You know, bringing into play that intuition, bringing into play one second here. The understanding that we have. I mean, you know, I tell anybody who's learning, you know, understand the numerology, understand what the numbers 1, 2, and up mean. And then using the imagination, not only for pips, because if you can imagine, and it comes to you what this 10 of Coins means, and you actually see and feel it with just what you're seeing here, then when you take Pamela Coleman Smith's picture of the 10 of Coins and you're seeing the family there, you know, you're not just relying on her snapshot. You can take her example and create your own mental snapshot. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So once some brief notes have been made for each of those 30 cards, let's undertake a 3-card setting, develop a narrative using them. So there was a whole pip exercise that I went through. But the basic gist is just internalizing what they look like and how, based on what the card is and not what just memorized terms. You know, aces, new beginnings, but I'm seeing like that wand being held, and what does that actually mean at the time? Okay. And I'm going to actually also, I need to bring up another page here. Hold on 1 second. Really? Windows 11? Alright, that doesn't make sense, Windows 11. I don't know if I like you. I don't hate having to learn new stuff. Actually, I enjoy the living heck out of it. But let me go in here. Let me take 10 seconds. Go into my channel and Twitch. It'd be like a 52-week course or 32. Okay. And 10 more seconds here. Don't you see? Please don't say a word. Do-do-do-do. Okay, there it is. Can't I pop that out? Guess not. Okay. So anyway, thank you for indulging me. I have been indulged. Okay, so, because it looks like on some of the other platforms there are people, so feel free if you have any comments or anything like that. Okay, so, and it goes into which pope this could possibly be. Certainly by the time of the Noble, the popes have been wearing a beard as initially a sign of mourning following the sacking of Rome in the early parts of the 16th century by none other than the Charles V. Okay, yeah, it goes into other things. Okay. And again, I'm just going through the highlights here just so that I can, I want to go back through since I have not looked at this in a month and a half because I was doing a play and that sucked up all my time. Okay, numbers and, okay. Separating the pips into Roman numerals from those that do not. Separating the pips from, okay, that include Roman numerals. So some of these pips have Roman numerals on them and some of them don't. Especially the 6 and the 8 of cups and its numbering in terms of the added form. Unnumbered cups are the 4 and the 6, and the 6 and the 8 numbers are mirrored. Okay. Yeah, there was just some interesting facts that was covering. Yes. Yeah, this is just a cool thing that how originally the swords used to show the handles, but now they don't. Let's see. I already talked about last time how the cards form a circle, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, and here we are again as we go into L'Amourex. L'amour. Love. Love, Philia, Eros. Okay. Above in order, Carrie. Okay, Charles VI, Carriel, and the Visconti sword, the Donial, the anonymous Parisian, and the Converse. The Converse. Even when restrained, is in the Carriel, the picture aspect. Yeah, there's an older deck that shows people just getting down and funky right here. Shows more on the lust side. If nothing else, the obviousness of the touching between the figures depicted should be apparent in all these figures and in all these images, and with this, the passion aspect, even when restrained. Okay. Conjugal love. Comparing our tarot card to the two images above, could it be that the figure on the left of the Noble image is celebrant or even a groom? So that is something that's interesting. Let me pull that up so I can refresh myself. See if I can find the love card. Okay. So here's some images from the Middle Ages showing celebrants for marriage. So it's asking, is it possible that these two people are getting married and this is actually like a priest or something like that? Could it be that the figure on the left of the Noble image is a celebrant or even the groom? Which would be him. Certainly in all these and many other depictions with seem standards, the celebrant is depicted in the center and the couple on either sides, hands in the act of being joined. Yet what is also distinct is that Cupid, on the Noble and other tarot, rather than these images, aims his arrow towards the right of the card where both the younger ones appear to be standing. In some ways, and to pick up on the points earlier raised in the question, the aspects of friendship or the love of equals, philia, followed by passion, eros, followed by more universal benign love, agape, can be seen as reflected from right to left in the three figures on the Tarot de Marseille. Writing this, I am not, however, suggesting that such was intended in the depiction. So, but yeah, I thought that was interesting that, you know, it almost looks like it could be a wedding. Let's see. Cupid. Alternatively, the blindness can be considered as further evidence that the arrow is loose, not with the aim of the eye, but with the precision of the heart. Cupid in each case seems intent on his aim. So they're saying that the reason why Cupid is blindfolded, the blindness can be considered as further evidence that the arrow is loosened not with the aim of the eye, but with the precision of the heart. Okay. Interesting. Windows, what are you doing here? Cool with me. So, Les Amoureux then is quite an apt title and not one that can be rendered as either the lover nor the lovers. If an English rendition is to be considered, something like the love struck would be appropriate. So that's right. So I ended up looking up that word. I'm surprised I didn't put a note in here. And this is one of the first Marseille, one of the first tarot decks. And Le Amorex, it's not the lover and it's not the lovers. It's more something like the love struck. In later cards, we just interpret it as the lovers. But that is an interesting little fact. Okay. Cards and the story of Eros and Psyche. Venus was very jealous and asked her son Cupid to make Psyche fall in love with a monster. When he saw how beautiful she was, Cupid dropped the arrow meant for her and pricked himself and fell in love with her. How romantic. Blah, 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 blah. Then they were married, and ever since, Psyche was made a goddess. Nice, lovely story. A note here. With the arrow of Cupid, the established maternal home, the tower, is blasted. The maternal crown toppled, and the arrow of love felt like a destructive thunderbolt, with the couple seemingly ejected from their former established house. So here's a note. Let's expand some of the similarities between the Les Amorex and the Maison Deux. I will first make one final suggestion as to the depictions of the three depicted individuals. The figures to the left of the card as the mother, and that to the right as the lover of the central young man. He is then faced with a choice which is inevitably fated and already hinted at by the direction of the arrow hovering above them, to choose to remain as child with his mother or to choose his lover and leave the maternal nest. So with the arrow of Cupid, the established maternal home, the tower is blasted, and the maternal crown is toppled. This sounds a lot like Joseph Campbell. What's that book about myths? I forgot it. But yeah, he talks about world myths and things like that, and finally becoming a man, leaving the mother, blah blah blah. Okay. So, how long have I been doing this? So, I think I am going to cut it here. I'm going to cut it here, and I'm going to call it a night. So, thank you very much. Bye.